Hi there, and welcome to today's video. And I'm absolutely delighted that I've got with me here today a very good friend of ours, Sue. And I think we met probably about 20 years ago now when we arrived in Doncaster. Sue is a member of one of the churches where I was minister here. So, Sue, thanks ever so much for being willing to have this faith journey conversation. So, perhaps we go back to your childhood years and how did that influence your faith journey?
Well, I was born into, both my brother and I, of course, were born into a Christian family. And I can't remember a time when I didn't go to church because obviously we were taken from being babies. And I remember very clearly the primary Sunday school teacher, a lady called Miss Pearson, who was later called Mrs. Taylor. And she was always smiling and she was always gentle and kind and calm. And even if somebody in the room was, being a bit disruptive,
Not
she
you, of
never
course.
sorry,
They're not you, of course.
of course not me. She'd just put a hand out onto the knee and just say, there. She was an amazing person and she really oozed the love of Jesus. And of course, she taught us about the love of Jesus. And she only, I think it might have been last year when she died. And at her funeral, the theme was love. I mean, her funeral wasn't quite what they'd wanted it to be, but the theme was love. Yeah. And there were social workers there who'd worked with her, who'd been interviewed by her and nurtured by her, who spoke in just the same way. You know, from the beginning of her life to the end, she was so full of Jesus. And that was my first influence, really. And in the Sunday school years, we did scripture exams. And I loved doing the scripture exams. And one year I did particularly well. And so I won a prize and I was given the book Mary Jones and Her Bible. Mm-hmm. And I'd probably be about 9 or 10. And reading that book and just reading about this young girl's thirst for the Bible really deeply went to my heart. So those years were very, very key in sort of grounding me in the roots, really, of faith. I believe. And sadly, Hallgate is about to close. Hallgate United Reformed Church. So that's really quite sad for them and for me, looking back at a place where my faith began. Yeah. The teenage years, I wasn't really one for going to youth club, and my brother did, but I was very much a home bird. But our life really, for most of my young years, it was church, in the morning, Sunday school in the afternoon, and Dad would go to church at night. And our social life was in the church. The only thing that I did that wasn't church was my music and my orchestras. Mm-hmm. So it was really a way of life.
So how would you describe your relationship with God at that time then?
Well, I from a very young age, I really felt that I knew God. I knew God had got his hand on me. I mean, we went to church as little children, and you sat there in the morning service, and there was nothing in those services when we had Sunday school in the afternoon for children. Yeah. But I just remember the awe and wonder. I don't remember being bored, and I know it was going over my head, but somehow I met God there. And but it was very much God. I know we learnt the stories of Jesus in Sunday school, but in church, it seemed to be God. Mm. I don't remember. I mean, it might just be my memory, but Jesus didn't seem to be a big part of what I was hearing. Right. It was God, faith in God. You went right to the big man. Yeah, so in a sense, I can't remember a time when I didn't believe in God. And because I was into music, I was very quiet and, I'd go to school and come home and that was it. I didn't really see friends out of school. I mean, I probably would say I was bullied at school now, but at the time I wouldn't have said it was bullying, because I was teased for being overweight. I was teased for being a square because I was into classical music and not pop music. But I always found that it didn't upset me too much, because I always knew I got a friend in Jesus.
Mm.
And so, although I was alone in some ways, I wasn't alone. So, people might be making fun of me, but, my experience of church at that time, before I really knew how things can go on behind the scenes, was just a place of love and acceptance, really.
That's great.
Yeah.
So how's your faith developed over the years then, since then?
Well, I went to college, and I went to the United Reformed Church in Bath for a year, and they were lovely people, and they really took care of me in that first year. But then it was a long way into Bath on your own on a Sunday, and it took most of the day, really. So in my second year, I joined some of my Anglican friends, and we went to the little Anglican church in the village where we were at college, and it was a said communion service, and then the vicar's wife would do breakfast afterwards, which was obviously a pull to some of the students, but it was the early service, so that they had to get up early. And then I sang in the Bath Abbey choir. So in a sense, my college years, again, I mean, going away from home for me was huge, and everybody at home didn't think I would stay. They didn't think I would be able to cope. But Mum always said that I had an inner strength. And when I went to college, I wasn't, I don't think I was reading my Bible or praying as much as I should. But I knew I'd got that friend with me. And one of my friends, her fiance, he was an out and out atheist at the time. And we used to talk into the early hours of the morning about faith. And it's quite interesting, because we were on totally different planes. But not many years after we left college, I had a letter to say he was training for the priesthood in Lincoln.
Wow.
And so, so that was quite amazing, really. That I don't know if my conversations into the early hours of the morning had any influence there, but in a sense, I was talking faith in that sense, but I didn't join the Christian Union or anything like that. And then, of course, I came back to Doncaster, went back to Holgate, and began my career in teaching. I actually, before I went to college, when I was about 17, I actually took a whole service at Holgate. I did, because I was doing A-level, and it was quite difficult doing A-level, because quite a few people in the group weren't believers. It was, and the RE teacher wasn't a believer, so it came from a different angle, and I did struggle with that a bit. But I think I had a sense of God's call on my life from a very young age, and at 17, I guess there were those that were encouraging me to go into congregational ministry. But music, from about 7, I've wanted to do music and teach music, and that was the way. That was what I chose. And as I look back, I would not have been ready to have taken the ministerial route at that time. I hadn't got any sort of I was no street cred, I guess. Yeah.
God uses it in different ways, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Whatever area we're in. Yeah.
So I came back. I became a Sunday school teacher, and was sort of I think just steadily going along in the faith that I had. I wouldn't say I was particularly growing at that time, although my faith meant a lot to me. And then circumstances changed, and we moved from Holgate, which was a big move, really, particularly for my dad, who'd been there as a boy, and was very much a senior member, a senior sort of in leadership there, really. and we went to Priory. And I mean, when we went to Priory, there was a 50-strong choir, and the church was virtually full. And the vibrancy of worship to me after Congregational Stroke United Reform, which was much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Austere, I guess, in some ways. You know, it was a much quieter, no emotion type of worship. Yeah. And so, I mean, my first sort of service at Priory, I mean, I was blown away by, you know, this church full of people singing God's praises, really. And we were very quickly welcomed and accepted into Priory, and so sort of things moved on. It was Joe Gibbon when we got there, but he was coming to the end of his time at Priory. But it was when Barry Cook came, somebody who wasn't accepted by Priory at the time and had a tough time, but he had a spirituality about him that was new to me, and yet seemed to I seemed to identify with what I felt in my heart through him. And of course, he asked me to do Priory Praise, this singing group, and even, I mean, all through this, I've got this nagging thing that God is wanting more of me. But Priory Praise, I mean, they were wonderful youngsters. They were all little musicians in their own right. But I was introduced to worship songs, which was something I'd never, you know, been sort of experienced before. And probably prior to that, if you'd said to me, you know, we're going to, I'd have said, no, that's not my sort of music. But Barry asked me, and he came to the house and he played me some songs. And once I'd heard them, they were going through my head all night. And I said to him, I can't do this, Barry. I said, you know, I just can't get these things out of my head, and I really can't do it. And he just said to me, turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Yeah. And so that's how Priory Praise came about. And we worshipped before worship, in a sense, because it was more than just the singing, it was what we were learning. And you know, it was just so spiritual. And I remember before one Circuit Youth Festival, because we were going up into church to sing, and you know, you get a little bit of jealousy, don't you, when something's good, and there'd be the attitude, oh, well, Priory Praise will win because they've got a musician. And so I took them into the Link Chapel, and we stood round in a circle. We held hands and we sang Spirit of the Living God. Well, of course, everybody thought that was our offering as they walked through, but of course that was actually our way of offering what we were going to do to God. Yeah. So when Priory Praise came to an end, I mean, I was bereft, really. It was like a chunk of me had gone too. And but through Priory Praise, I grew in faith and I grew in confidence, really. And I can't quite get timing right, but Tim McQuibbin, I don't know if you knew Tim McQuibbin, but I mean, this was before he became a minister. He introduced a new song to us one Sunday, and it was The Servant King. Mm-hmm. And that was a sort of a turning point, because I don't really remember at Easter people, Rob Frost, it was the way to the cross was the theme, and he talked about the way of surrender, but he also talked about places of surrender for him. And I think in my life, you know, it wasn't one big bang. I've had places of surrender, and I think the day Tim McQuibbin introduced The Servant King, it was the verse, there in the garden of tears, my heavy load he chose to bear. And it just hit me like a hammer. And suddenly I just realised that, you know, I knew he died for all people, but suddenly on that morning, it just hit me that actually he died for me.
It's a bit like John Wesley's heartwarming experience.
Yeah. And so that was a turning point. That might have come before Priory Praise, but I'm not sure. And I had a great sense that God had got more for me. He wanted more from me. But it's this sort of independent streak that we have, isn't it? And I think living alone, because you've got to be independent, it's probably even stronger that, you know, you think to yourself, well, if I don't do it, nobody will. And you know, it's up to me. And so I think God and I really have had a sort of a tussle, because in here, I know God is saying, you know, calling me, and this was to preach, but I'm saying, oh, well, no, because I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And no, it's not the right time. And I mean, another turning point was Barry having gone, and I think we had the Bill Warbank years, was you coming, and, you know, the starting up of Bible studies and prayer groups, and the healing and wholeness services, and all those things which were taking me deeper and deeper into Jesus, really. And I just remember that that service when you must have been startled as I hurled down the stairs and said to you, I think God's calling me to preach, because it was literally as though I'd had a hand on my back that had sort of pushed me out of that pew, as much as say, you know, it's now. And so that was another point at which I'd actually, you know, got off my high horse in a sense and said, yes, Lord. Then obviously I'd not been to conferences and things, and we went to Easter People, and that, I think that was the Way of the Cross, that first Easter People I went to. And William Porter and Hay, I've forgotten his name now, Jonathan Hay, they were leading, you know, from the front, and I just found that whole experience so powerful. You know, I was going to the front at almost every call, because it just felt that, you know, Jesus was just there. That room was full of the Holy Spirit, and at the end, people didn't want to go; they just sat, and it was something I'd never experienced before. And then, of course, the Share Jesus Week, and I really felt that God wanted so much more. And of course, you know, as you know, I offered for presbyteral ministry, and I look back at that, and I think to myself, you know, I let a room full of people faze me rather than relying on God. But having said that, I actually feel that God had got different things for me.
Yeah.
And that, you know, the opportunity came so much later in 2015 for me to pastor the 5 churches in the Thorn section, or Thorn Stream.
But in effect, you're actually almost doing the job of a presbyter, weren't you?
Well, I mean, at Priory, I just gave more and more, and it was just so natural to slip into the things that I did. And so when I went to Thorn, in that year, I just felt I was so much in where God wanted me to be. And the churches were very gracious in that year. I mean, they knew that they were having a minister, a collared minister at the end of it, but they were really gracious. But the things that I did, I mean, it was when Margaret had broken her hip and she was in Mexborough, and I was visiting her, and Tom rang me or texted me. There's a lady
in the superintendent.
Yeah, the home in Thorn, and the matron's wrong, and they want someone to go and give her end of life prayers. And I just gulped, because I mean, I'd done nothing like that before. And I said to Margaret, well, I'll have to go. And I'm driving home, and I thought, well, I'll go and get the service book. But I also rang Olive Wall to ask her if she could tell me where it was, because I hadn't a clue where this home was. And she said to me, do you want me to come with you? And I said, oh, yes, please. And so we went along, and it was a really old-fashioned home, and the matron was hair in a bun, and she was dressed almost in old-fashioned uniform. And she took us into this room, and they'd got music that the lady obviously liked playing very quietly, a dim light on. And it was beautiful, really. But at the side of the bed was a big mattress, and I'm looking at, in case she fell out of bed, I'm looking at this mattress and thinking, how do I get near? And so I knelt on the mattress at the side of her and took hold of her hand. Then Olive knelt at the side of me, and then this matron knelt at the side. And there was one part of it that was really quite comical, but there was another part that was really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I mean, I said the 23rd Psalm, and I knew that even though she was quite deeply unconscious, really, you could see in her movements that she was actually responding to what she was hearing. And I mean, God just equipped me in that. And, you know, in a sense, he sent Olive to go and just be my support in something that neither of us had any experience of. Yeah, so, and funerals, obviously, and visiting families for funerals, you think, what am I going to say? And yet, when you get there, they say it for you almost. And it was people that were sort of saying, well, we went to Sunday school, but we don't really want prayers and things. Now I'm saying to them, well, you've asked for a Methodist service, so, you know, it will include prayers. And then when you stood in front of perhaps a group of people with nominal faith, and you're actually speaking faith to them, God was just amazing. I mean, he took me places, and I did things that I would never have thought I could do.
That's a fantastic testimony, Sue, and it's been great for me to see you grow and develop and grow in faith and being willing time and again to step out of the boat when God has called you. That's been fantastic. We probably need to draw ourselves towards a conclusion, and I want to ask you, what piece of advice would you give to someone in their life as a disciple of Jesus?
The thing is, in a sense, it's never give up. It's the old song, isn't it? Trust and obey. Yeah. I mean, when just before the pandemic, when I went to Thorn and preached a service, led a service that I didn't know I was going to be leading, it was Psalm 46 that came into my head. God is our refuge and strength, and ever-present help in trouble. And, you know, though times are tough, the mountains fall into the sea, he's there with us. And it's the reminder that he is the Almighty God, and that we can't see the big picture, and things might seem to be falling apart around us, but he's still in control, and that there's a power far greater than you or I, and just hold on to that. That's
a great message for our time, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
God is in control despite everything. So finally, Sue, your favourite Bible verse or passage?
Well, I haven't chosen this particularly because it's my favourite, you know, in real terms, but because of, you know, over the last couple of years, I've not been as well. And because God has just been there when I couldn't do it, in a sense, I've chosen 2 Corinthians 12, when Paul says, therefore, in order to keep me from being conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And God has just shown that to me again and again. And I've driven to church to preach, and you know, I haven't written my sermon until 4 o'clock in the morning because I've just nothing to say. And I've been saying to God, I can't do this. You know, if this is going to happen this morning, it's you. And so in a sense, it's another place of surrender. When I didn't feel up to it, I actually surrendered to God, and his grace was sufficient.
Wonderful. What a great note on which to finish. And that's a fantastic testimony, Sue. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And we look forward to getting back to Doncaster and catching up with you and our other friends here. So thanks ever so much. God bless.
You're welcome. It's been lovely to talk to you.